thank you so much for having me. I'm going to go back to this, and I love this quote: "A generation which ignores history has no past and no future." So thank you for what you guys do, and what a great turnout, and for you people that love your unbelievable city and don't let the tales in. So I like to tip my hat to you first of all when I come. And I also have to give a huge thank you. I started researching about Mabel Gilbert in 2017. And so never thought I'd write a book. People usually ask me, are you related to him? No, I'm not, but I'm gonna tell you, but I like to thank all these entities. It is very historically accurate, but it is considered historical fiction because the characters and the dialogue. The characters are taken from censuses, but I've developed them. And so the dialogue between them is the fictional part. But it took a lot of help along the way, and so I just like to start off with that. And people say, okay, Rivers and Destinies, why did you write a book about Mabel Gilbert? So this is me, and this is Gilbert Creek. Actually, Mabel Gilbert has 3 bodies of water named after him, 3 different creeks in Texas. He's the only one that has 3 different bodies of water named after him, and 3 different creeks. One in the Dallas area, Gilbert Branch now, one in Fannin County, one in Wichita County. But this is Gilbert Creek, which is on our property. It runs 22 miles, and this is the Red River. So from my back door, I can be on the Red River in a minute and a half. My husband's put in a bridge for me over Gilbert Creek. And at first I just started researching, and this is his historical marker that is next door to us on the Boy Scout camp. So that's why I became interested in learning more about Mabel Gilbert. Did he live on our property? I just had to find out. So my first research went through county courthouses and the General Land Office, the GLO. That's where I got most of my information from. And I did in fact find that our land, that Mabel Gilbert did own our land. Actually 3 people have owned. I found the original, so there might be more, but 3 big families were the Gilberts, the Prescotts, and the Corneliuses. And so the more I learned, the more interested I got in it. There are things that were signed by him, and it's funny with it. He was a very manly man, and he would sign his name of business deals as M. Gilbert. And so you wonder why, but I'm sure that had something to do with being teased but he was a mountain of a man. Oh, sorry, I touched that. But as I found more documents and letters and information, it just made me think, okay, there's a real story here. There's just a real story. This is something that I found, a public debt from some service that he did in 1841 that's very close to your Grapevine area. And so along the way, I found out there's people that are just as interested in Gilbert Creek as myself. And MC, who won the trivia today, that was totally not fair, because he's a historian from the Dallas area, even though he did live in Grapevine for a time, that has helped me so much. When I think about maps, my husband says it's kryptonite to me. So any map question I have, it's MC or some of the other people, and he's just helped me with so many things. Tom C. Gooch, we'll talk about him later on in the presentation. Glenn Rogers, who is a state representative, he is a descendant of both Gooch and Rogers are descendants of Mabel Gilbert. A.C. Green, who wrote for the Dallas Morning News, Vivian Lou Castleberry. Susanna Louise Kelly is from Wichita County, historian, but I got a lot of information and research from her too. But I think the most credible one is this James A. Morphus, because as a young man, he spent time in the settlement of Dallas and then wrote about it. So I really like using it for my research for my book, a lot of his information too. I can't go without mentioning Dr. Deborah Lyles. She did a lot of research about, she was fascinated with Mabel Gilbert too, so I used a lot of hers as well. So with all that going aside, I want to tell you a little bit about Mabel Gilbert. First of all, 21 children, 18 that lived to adulthood. Yes, 18 that lived to adulthood. 2 different wives, but still 21 children. He was a trader. He actually traded. He came from a very affluent plantation in Tennessee, which was, sometimes you can see one of the Carolinas, but it is Tennessee. because, you know, the parameters of the state changed. But he was a settler, very interested in land. He was had a great relationship with Native Americans, and that also helped him to find the good springs like Grapevine Springs. Aided in the development of roads and water, and traveled. He was a steamboat captain, and he spent a lot of time on many rivers. And so that's just a little bit of background about Mabel Gilbert. These are his first 13 children, so I thought I'd just add that to you. The last two passed away, and that's when his wife, Cherry Morris, died. She's actually his first cousin, which was a thing in the day, because they wanted to keep the plantations kind of in the family. But he did marry his first cousin, and they had these 13 children. And a great many of them were in Tennessee before they even started leaving, but Mabel at a young age started transporting goods for his plantation before steamboats were a thing. And so they float them on the Mississippi and then sell their flatboat for lumber and make the trek back. So he got to understand a lot of the roads and dealing with the Indians and doing that. And so that's just some background about Mabel before. So as I said, he started out in Tennessee. He also was instrumental in a lot of roads, which I think it'll play into when I start talking about the Grapevine area. I wanted you to kind of look at this. But the first land he bought was in Arkansas. Then he went to Bailey, the settlement of Bailey, current name Bonham, on Bodart Creek. So the English Fort English. Then Tarrant County, became a Texas Ranger, the Military Road, Village Creek, and we're going to go over some of this. Fort Byrd. One of the most interesting things, I was born in Dallas, Texas, so I'm a Dallas girl. I lived on Norway Road, and when I was researching all of this, I found that he had the first Anglo pioneer baby in Dallas, in the settlement of Dallas, and he also had the first pioneer Anglo baby in Wichita County on our property, and he's buried somewhere close to where I live now too. That's his final resting place. So I was like, wow, I mean, that's a lot of coincidences in my life. And my parents were also my granddad had places in Hot Springs too. So I just thought, and my husband said, if you're this enamored by the story, you should tell his life story, because he moved around so much. I feel like he's a very untold Texas hero, but he rubbed shoulders with a lot of really cool Texas heroes too. But then, you know, friends with John Neely Bryan, one of the first in the Beeman and Bryan, and MC Toyer is a descendant of the Beemans and Bryans. I mean, yes, Beemans and the Bryans, and from Dallas, and so he's real active in the Dallas history as well. Then back to Fannin County, and so Pilot Grove, another road from Shreveport to Indian to the on another Indian trail. So very close to the Indians, spoke many different languages, traded with them, was friends with them. So first of all, another question, who can tell me what the first national park is? Our country's first national park?
Yellowstone.
Huh?
Yellowstone?
Nope. Hot Springs, Arkansas. Our first national park, yes. And I think MC found these documents for me too. So he first bought land in Arkansas. And I say this, and I want to start this off before we get into his Texas, because he was there also when Sam Houston was in the Arkansas area, living with the Indians, trading with the Indians. Also, John Neely Bryan, who is the founder, of Dallas. And another person, has anyone ever heard of Holland Coffee? I think I could write a book about Holland Coffee too. It's the coolest story, really cool story. But he was also and I'll get to that in a little bit, in the Arkansas area about the same time, before they came to Texas. But I threw that in there because I thought that was interesting. This is an actual map of the Cook County map from the Military Road. And if you look really fine right here, you can see M. Gilbert right here. And I know that I'm not sure if he worked on the military road. I couldn't find documentation of that, but I know he sold goods to the people who were working. You know, it's another thing we don't have a lot of, it's harder to find data on Mabel Gilbert because he wasn't a military man. And so a lot of that gets lost in the shuffle if you didn't serve in the military. You know, we rely more on the censuses and the things that we find in the county courthouse. But this is fun, this little information right here about his land in the Bonham area, not far from where our Speaker of the House, Sam Rayburn's land is, right around in there. Also the same area that Davy Crockett was going to settle, called it the garden spot of the world or of America or something like that, on Bodark Creek, Bodark the Lake, that's what they say. This is Bodark River. But he did settle, Mabel Gilbert settled in the area of Bodark. And so bringing up Tom Gooch, who was a big philanthropic person in Dallas area, there's a Tom C. Gooch Elementary in Dallas named after him, and he's a great-great-great-grandson of Mabel Gilbert. So he was also obsessed with researching about Mabel Gilbert. So I thought, when I was doing my research, I'll go on DISD and see if they mention that in the Tom C. Gooch Elementary. So I went, I was so excited, and they said, yes, the pioneer female Mabel Gilbert. And I was like, oh gosh, I just like, oh. So I just feel like I need to tell this manly man story because it just gets messed up sometimes. I did let DISD know that, and they took that off. And then I've seen they've put something else on there that's you know, not the same, but I just want him to be remembered for the man full of grit that he was. Another thing I want to point out was his mother, okay, so Tom Gooch's mother was Maddie Taylor, daughter of Tennessee Gilbert, which we went through all those. He named his kids, when he ran out of family names, he started naming them like when they got pregnant with them, because you know, he was traveling so much and referring, you know. So Tennessee got, you know, they got pregnant in Tennessee, and so they named her Tenny Gilbert Taylor. Robert H. Taylor, which if you don't know much about him, really cool guy that worked directly under Sam Houston too, was his son-in-law. So was Mabel Gilbert's son-in-law. So much history involved in there together that it's just amazing. And so here now we come, this is actually a receipt of some sort in 1839 to the Republic of Texas, where Mabel Gilbert sold 18 bushels of corn to the rangers that were set in. Maybe they were working on the military road at that time, or if they were Texas Rangers, whatever. But I loved finding data like this that kind of told the story of his life. This is taken from the Dallas Morning. You know, his first daughter was named Nicey Eunice Gilbert after Charity's mom, so after Mabel's aunt. But she was interviewed, I think she was probably in her early 70s, but I like this in the Dallas Morning News in 1893 because she called him the second William Penn. He was that close to the Native Americans. He respected them. He communicated well with them. He tried to make sure things were fair. And so this was taken out of the Dallas Morning News by Nicey Gilbert Fuller Hampton. Hampton's also a big name in Dallas too, that her husband that she married. Closer to y'all's history, you kind of say Grapevine. I know someone said that their family came in 1850 right here, but you kind of say Grapevine, early 1840s. What do you claim your 43 is when the Springs? What do you claim for early? 44. Yeah. So he was a little bit before that when he was here, and I kind of looked. This is a timeline, and I apologize. It's kind of but in 1839 he was a Texas Ranger. 1840 he had a horse-powered grist mill. He was Associate Justice Special Commissioner to detect fraudulent claims, and so somehow involved in the military road, whether it was a guide selling goods, you know, to the military, knew where they were going to be, somehow involved. He was always involved closely on roads. 1841 is Birdville, Bird's Fort. Some of them called it Camp Gilbert. He had a big, I think that Larry might have mentioned that he helped. I don't know for sure if he helped build the Birds Fort. That might have been his brother Wilson Gilbert, but they were all involved in it, and I know he lived there for a little while. But the military road plans, the settlers were blocked by Texas Immigration Land Company, W.S. Peters, so the Peters Colony. At some point, they were blocked by that. So this is an affidavit, if you will, of Hall & Coffee, which he is the friend that he met in Arkansas, I believe, that had the apprentice of John Neely Bryan was his apprentice and helped him. John Neely Bryan went because he was ill. They told him to go spend time in a certain area, and that's where Hall & Coffee took him in and started talking to him about trade and introduced him to some of the Native Americans in trade. But I thought it was interesting. Well, you say you don't want to talk out of both sides of your mouth, because he was a Texas Ranger. Mabel Gilbert was a Texas Ranger for a short time, but he was also very fair and enjoyed the Indians. But I like here, I don't know exactly, this came from the Republic of Texas of something I said, but this was like an affidavit, but it said, the Texians were at peace and on friendly terms with the Chickasaw and Choctaw Indians. He states that to the best of his knowledge, the Indian or Indians charged to have been killed were Coshata and were at war at Texas, engaging in stealing horses, and under these circumstances, the party of Texians pursued them. So Mabel Gilbert was one of the ones that were in the Village Creak expedition, which how many of you have heard of that before? Okay, that's for this area, you should probably know, because if you look at, can you read these names on here at all? Some of the people's names that are on here are just, there's Hall & Coffee again, John Denton, Denton County, Denton, do you say Rattan or Rattan? Rattan, the Rattans, McFarlands, Edward H. Tarrant, some of the Wagners, Webbs, really famous Texas history people, Henry B. Stout, Daniel Montague County. Pardon?
They're like the real settlers.
Yes, really early. And so they got together, so it was more of a militia group than the real Texas Rangers that you hear about together. And it's funny, I heard a judge who had written about, Mabel Gilbert didn't write a lot of letters. He did not correspond home a lot like the Beeman brothers did, or there wasn't a lot for me to find of that. But I did find a judge that spoke about Mabel Gilbert, that he ended up with some horses from a Indian group, and Mabel recognized them, and he made that judge take them back to the Indians. I found a judge research, so he's very fair. But this group, that's what the bands, we just kept pushing them and moving them different places. And so they were really friendly with the Native Americans that were close to them. But it was when we kept pushing bands and not honoring our agreements with them that the problem started happening. And so this Village Creak expedition, this is taken from Stephen Moore's book, The Savage Frontier, the 3rd volume, but lots of cool, someone could come and just speak about that expedition at one of your meetings because of all the famous people, Texans, that were there. I was wondering, I saw somewhere, I was gonna ask you guys, especially since you're so active in your history here, I'd written this down. Have y'all heard of the Johnson, okay, it referred to it as the Village of Grapevine. Have you heard about your area being referred to as the Village of Grapevine?
Are you saying Johnson?
Yes, the Johnson, it's called the Johnson Outpost. Johnson Outpost.
Yeah.
Johnson Station Outpost, which is not far from the Grapevine area.
Grapevine, it's in the south part of Arlington.
Right, so really close to you guys. And I saw that there were 2 Johnsons listed on here.
No, they're not related. He came about 1846.
He came later, and that was Middleton Tate Johnson. I just didn't know if these, I haven't dove into it, but I just wondered if they were related somehow.
He was a member of the, of Nixon War era Rangers in Texas. They were
Okay.
stationed in Texas, they did not go to Mexico.
Okay.
And Johnson Station was one of the outposts, and then afterwards he remained there until they're
Okay.
one of the founding citizens of Tarrant County.
I was just really hoping that Lindley Johnson, y'all would say, oh yeah, we know him, you know.
I'll give you two more famous names there.
Tell me, who am I missing?
Not enough time.
Okay, all right. Like I said, you could have someone come and speak just about the Village Creek expedition, which when they were doing this, they were tromping all over your area. It's not like they just stayed in one spot. You know, they were, and especially if there were springs here, that was one thing. Mabel Gilbert, he was an entrepreneur, and he was a self-proclaimed mineralogist. It's easy for some people to say. On our property in Wichita County, he founded copper and sent it off in 1860 to New York. I mean, I just think that that's just so amazing. I just think that he just was way ahead of his time. So I know y'all recently had someone from Bird's Fort come and speak here, but a significant spur known as the Bird's Fort Trail off of the military, Preston Road, that's Holland Coffee's area. And that's really, and also he had the area where Lake Texoma is also. He had a trading post there and in Arkansas. But what I love about this, I took this picture myself when I went and spoke in Arlington to their historical society, which I think they have big plans for this area, don't they, MC?
The developers planning a cultural center.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Okay. So this is like the remains of it, but this right here, I'd only heard of it as Lake Sophia. And Sophia was one of Holland Coffee's. You could have a whole talk on this too. Sophia, really interesting Civil War information, but she was married to Holland Coffee and she was a looker. And they said they called it Lake Sophia because it was such a beautiful lake. So that's another thing. And so close to you guys and the military road. So when they were serving there, Mabel Gilbert and his family almost starved there. They were told that there was going to be provisions there, and they weren't there for very long. But it was basically a post that had been abandoned. So this area, this is a Fort English replica, and this is a Bird's Fort replica. But the Pioneer Pathways and you're the Metroplex gateway for these pioneers that were here so early. Now I'm going to touch on some of the interesting public figures that I learned about when researching Mabel Gilbert. Has anyone ever heard of Commodore Alexander James Dallas II? Okay, he's one of my favorite discoveries of when I was researching about Mabel Gilbert, and a lot of people don't know a lot about him, but he joined the Navy when he was 14 years old. My next slide is his affluent parents, and I'm sure they were very upset that he went off and joined the Navy. Their second son, George Mifflin Dallas, was the lawyer that they wanted, but I think that Commodore Alexander James Dallas just had a lot of fight in him and wanted to stand for something. Two things I want you to know about him. He was kind of a rock star in Texas because of two different things. Has anybody ever heard about Tampico? So he saved a lot of lives in Tampico when we captured Santa Ana, when they had captured him. They had threatened to kill a lot of people, and he went in there and ordered that. With Andrew Jackson gave the order. But then also, he was the first one that shot the War of 1812, the shot. He was as a young person. And also during Texas independence, he was also, I didn't even know much about the Texas Navy during the Texas independence fight. They kind of brought back privateers, and they would just be like little bees, they just intercept things, anything to do to throw the Mexicans, the other flagships off. And they ended up, in the Invincible was taken, they got right before the Battle of San Jacinto, ended up getting some ammunition, things that would have made that battle a lot different. And so he's known for that. So just kind of a rock star in the Texas area. And people, I just don't think knew that. I think that there's been a lot of talk about these are his parents. You know, there's letters from him to Thomas Jefferson. And then George Mifflin Dallas was their second son. And a lot of people think that the city of Dallas was named after George Mifflin Dallas. And I heartily agree that the county was named after George Mifflin Dallas, but because of my research, I feel like the city was named after Commodore Alexander James Dallas. So this is my slide. I like to say the wives of Dallas, kind of like the TV show, you know, the wives of this or that. So he married some really famous families, you know, the Commodore Alexander James Dallas. The first one being Henrietta Meade, and her dad is Richard Warsom Meade, and he was a big naval guy too. He collected art from all over the world, which I just found out, you guys. Have anybody of you heard of the Meadows Museum in SMU? Okay, they've secured recently an oil painting of Richard Warsom Meade, and they didn't understand why this famous Spanish artist would paint him, and because he collected art. But he's also the father-in-law of who Dallas, the city, was named after. And so I've let the Meadows Museum know that. We've been talking about that, and they have his portrait in there, but they didn't realize that that's what it was about. And then if you're a Civil War buff, you know about George Gordon Meade. So that was Commodore Alexander James Dallas's brother-in-law, and lots of cool data on them together and during battle, things going on. He'd hop on a ship, so-and-so, and a very famous Civil War person. Henrietta died, and then he married Mary Bird Willis, who was a descendant of George Washington. She was George Washington's great niece. Yes?
Is this the Bird family from Dallas?
This is the Dallas family. So, the Bird family.
Yeah.
They might have settled there. This family was from not from Dallas. So, yeah. But I love this story about the son. So Mabel Gilbert and Commodore Alexander James Dallas have two things in common. They never met their last child. Mabel's 21st child, 18 but lived to adulthood, was born after he died. And then Commodore never met Trevnion. But I think it's so cool. Trevnion he studied at the Ivy Leagues, but he also went and spent time with this Aunt Princess Murat. You know, so just very aristocratic people. I failed to tell you that Mabel Gilbert's plantation was in Dixon County, Tennessee, and Andrew Jackson's plantation, the Hermitage, was in Davidson County. So they would have known each other. They would have traded, you know, done the same thing. It was later that Andrew Jackson came, but then Andrew Jackson was friends with all these people too. So it's just crazy. Many of you are familiar with this, the replica of the cabin at John Neely Bryan's cabin in downtown. This is all courtesy of MC Toyer right here. This is Gilbert Branch, which is also Kidd Springs?
It was Coon Springs later on.
Right,
It was
Coons.
originally Gilbert Springs and the creek that drained from it was Gilbert Creek, but they've been renamed and it's all been changed.
Right, but Kidd Springs was actually part of Gilbert Springs, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Gilbert Springs.
Yes. And so you can still visit Kidd Springs, and that's what he always found the best water places on our land. There are natural springs that come up that are just fine water. He just knew that because of his relationship with the Indians. And then this John Neely Bryan. This is one of the Beeman brothers, and this is something that MC changed with the Dallas Morning News that corrected it, because one thing John Neely Bryan said, he felt like Holland Coffee kind of saved his life when he was training him in Arkansas, and he said, I'm going to name my first child after you. And he did, and they tried to say he was the first pioneer Anglo settler baby in Dallas, and MC came back and corrected that it was actually Morris Gilbert. And we're going to get to Morris right there. The interesting part about, and I can't believe I didn't put this slide in, but one famous thing about Mabel Gilbert and his wife is that they floated into the city of Dallas instead of going by land. And they put cottonwoods, strapped them together, and floated on the Trinity River sailed into the first lady to sail into Dallas. And these women are just, and that's what Deborah Lyles, talked about. And you were talking about the Texas, your Texas History Day or whatever. What they lived in, even on our property, the extremes of the cold and the heat. And here she was pregnant and on a boat floating into a new unknown land to build another life. Here they are. And so I don't know how that slide didn't make it in here, but this is actually a letter that MC got from the Texas State Archives that John Beeman drafted about the families that felt like the first families of Dallas feel like that because of the Peters Colony, and they changed the parameter on that like 4 times, and also rescinded something with the Military Road Act. And I think that's probably why Mabel Gilbert didn't stay in Dallas very long. He was kind of a nomadic soul. He never stayed anywhere long enough for people to really remember him, and so that's why I felt like I needed to tell his story. And so basically, this just talks about how a grievance against the Republic of Texas of things that were changed. And so here it talks about, this is from my timeline, and then again, I'm sorry, it's a little bit blurry, but Morris was the first Anglo settler baby born in Dallas, 1842, after floating into town. We talked about already Gilbert Branch. So floated the way of near present-day commerce and riverfront. Did you know Dallas was supposed to be like a port city? They envisioned it, and another reason why they named it after a naval guy, a water guy, in my opinion, they thought it was going to be another like Galveston and the Red River historian, if you ever follow any of her, she says it could have been, but then we had the Civil War, and it just never was developed that way. But and then Sam Houston signed the 3rd contract for the Peters Colony in 1842. The 4th contract, about that, signed in 1843 between the settlers and the frustrated families that. And I think, and some things I read said that Mabel Gilbert didn't like the black, waxy soil in Dallas, that one of his crops had floated away. So we don't know because he didn't document it, but he didn't spend a lot of time in Dallas. This is more information that I've received from MC. So here's a public square in Dallas, and this would have been the Gilbert lot right here. From the John Neely Bryan survey, and then the Grigsby survey. And this is another old map of 1860 map of Dallas, and this is the Gilbert branch that's right here. All right, so I get to this part. I love this part. I found this at the Fannin County Museum in Bonham, and they said, "Oh, we wanted you to see this. This is the only picture of Mabel Gilbert, and this is him right here." And I said, "That is Morris Gilbert." And they said, "We don't know what's wrong with his face." Well, that is documented. He got actually friendly fire defending himself against Indians, and his face was disfigured from that fact. So that's the firstborn in Dallas. And so this, I say everything of my is factual. This is all deducing right here, where I named the brothers and the sons, and I know they're Gilberts, but I believe from all the research that I've done, and the hat and the way it looked, that this is Mabel. But the rest of them, it's just deducing the sons, and by the ages, by what I read about the way certain ones looked, which ones are the youngest. So that's that. We just wish that the women were in there too. But what's funny about this is when I talked to them, and I got this picture, and it's blown up right here. at the Tarrant County Museum, they said, there was just a man in here asking about Mabel Gilbert. And I was like, what? Who was it? And they said, well, I said, you need to give him my number, because I'm always trying to meet family members and find out more as much as I can. And it ended up being Glenn Rogers, who is, I showed you earlier. And now it's just like MC. I mean, we're fast friends, and he and his wife have been to our property, and they've invited us to theirs. And he is also a great grandson of Mabel Gilbert, but he didn't know a lot of this. He read my book in 2 days. He was just blown away. And he also wrote this article in the Dallas Morning News, and it's back here if you want to look at it. And a lot of this information he did not know until he read my book and started doing his research now. But he was also related to Tom C. Gooch. So anyway, very, very exciting when that got in there too. So no, I wasn't related to the Gilberts, but I just had a heart for their story. And for our young people in here, I'm a reading specialist by trade. My master's, I'm a reading specialist. I never thought I'd read a book, but I think everyone in here has a book inside of them. If you just get, like I said, I researched this for 7 years, and my husband finally was this one who said, you need to write this down. You need to put this together. But when my research was, I went to Natchez, Mississippi, and this is not any of this, it's about the same time period of a steamboat, and then this is a ferry on the Natchez. But I was so excited when I just love going into these courthouses and these places and just look. I always just say, where's your oldest Texas history stuff, you know? And this was in Natchez. This is Mississippi. And so I found out 2 of Mabel's brothers were on here. And in my book, the part of the fictional part of it, I also read that Mabel's enslaved population was uncharacteristically loyal, and he armed them, and he also tried to claim them as he tried to, I believe he came to Mexico, Texas with Mexico when he first started. It was against the law to have slaves. But then all that happened and it changed again. And Arkansas, the same thing at the time. It was against the law at that time to have slaves there too. But these are his brothers, William and Thomas. And this talks about someone sued him as a captain of a steamship for setting their yellow-complected slave Harriet free, took him on her ship and took him away. And they won it because it was dismissed at the plaintiff's costs. So I know he didn't have to pay that. And then Thomas Gilbert, a different year, same thing. He was sued, claims the defendant captained the steamboat tobacco plant. Plaintiff slaves escaped via his steamboat, seeks $1,500 of the value of the slave. So these are the only thing, that's part of the historical part of it too, I believe. And then all of a sudden, Dr. Deborah Lyles, all of a sudden, all of Mabel's enslaved people are off his tax records. And I believe that and it was before Emancipation Proclamation, and I believe he got them away before the Civil War. That's what I believe, and that's the fictional part of it. But I feel like I have a lot of facts to back up my fellow beliefs. So there's Mabel, another picture. This is his buffalo gun. He was a buffalo hunter. He respected it. But it's at the 1890 Jail Museum in Henrietta, Texas, which is Clay County, if you ever want to make a road trip. So that's actually his. And I am W.C. Gilbert contacted me. That's what's been so fun too. With 18 that lived to adulthood, now their children's children are learning about this. I get calls from all over the United States of great-grandchildren, just like, we knew something, but we didn't know all this, and it's just been so much fun. But they donated that gun to that museum there. So I thought you might want to know the rest of the children. He married again after Charity died. He was 59. He married Rachel Gibbs at 28 years, and then they had 8 more kids. And so, total of 21, and the last one, and this is her name, Mary Ellen Rachel Exonia I think it might be 2 N's. Sometimes it says 1, sometimes 2. Mabel Gilbert, and she died after. He died in March of 1870, and she was born in October. But in my research, guess what I found about this last Mabel Gilbert? This is the Boston Globe. This is Mabel Gilbert. And it's about the same age. I have no idea if she would be about, that time frame. But standing up for what she believes too. I think that they were just people that stood up for what they believed. This is my husband, Tim, and this is our property. I really feel like and you're welcome, anybody's welcome to come. You can see the historical marker. But when you walk on, especially the 40 acres of our land that's on the other side of the creek, you feel like you're back in time. It's really untouched. And how many of you seen the movie with Kevin Costner where he says, build it and they will come, the baseball movie? I feel like I hike this property. It's so dear to me. I feel like the settlers are saying, tell our story so they will know. And so this is a replica of a dugout. So they left these fancy plantations and ended up living in some really, but we're in dugouts by the time they get to our property and in the ground, which are pretty insulated pretty well. With this extreme weather we're talking about, if they're cool down there or if they keep you warm in the winter. This was the last snow we got on our property. But thank you so much for your attention and for letting me come and talk a little bit about Mabel Gilbert. Are there any questions? Any questions? Yes, go ahead. Well, I just really, one thing that I've learned through all this, there's the good old boy factor was around for a long time. Burt Burnett, Texas, was actually Gilbert, Texas. And President Teddy Roosevelt was hunting with Samuel Burnett, who was actually from Fort Worth, and his family just had land, that they hunted on. And he ended up changing it to Burt Burnett. And so I might do a sequel on how things change a little bit later on, from that. So, yes. Anybody else? Anything else?
How many, did he just have 2 wives for that?
Just for 2 wives. Just 2 wives. No, I think it was every time he came home. I mean, you think about transporting, it would take a long time. You couldn't just go from the, from New Orleans back to the plantation. It would take a long time, and so every time he'd come home, dadgummit, she'd have another baby.
Something you haven't found in your research is that both of those women had to have been farsighted because that was an ugly man.
Well, I think that he had a lot of charisma is what I think. I think that he was a manly man. 21, 18 that lived to adult. And the more I read and the more I research, you were out in the middle of nowhere having these babies. So there's lots of things that could go wrong with mom or baby. And so just to have 3 that didn't.
The other kids helped.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
Fascinating story.
Anybody else?
Anybody else have a question? Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome so much. You're welcome so much.